My mother abandoned me at 16 for her new kids. Years later, she showed up demanding $40K for them, but when she attacked me in my apartment, police arrested her, and now she has a restraining order against her. I'm 31 years old, I work in real estate, and I make a decent salary after years of hard work, and I need to tell this story because what happened these last few weeks basically confirmed something I already knew, but I guess didn't want to fully accept. My mother never really loved me, or at least not in the way a mother is supposed to love her child. And the craziest part is, I thought I had already processed all of this years ago. You know, when she kicked me out of the house at 16. But it turns out you never fully finish processing your own mother abandoning you just like that. Let me start from the beginning, because otherwise this isn't going to make sense. My mom had me when she was 20, so she was a young mother, and my biological father basically disappeared before I was born, like he didn't even get to know me or try to be present a single time in my life. I grew up knowing it was just mom and me. Well, and my maternal grandparents who literally saved us because we lived with them, and they helped with everything. Until I was like 8 or 12. I'm not sure exactly when. My childhood was relatively normal, let's say. I mean, we weren't rich or anything, but it was fine. I had what I needed. My mom worked and my grandparents took care of me after school. We did things together on weekends. It wasn't perfect, but I can't say it was horrible either. You know what I mean? Everything changed when my mom met Michael. He was like 6 years older than her. Worked in construction, I think. And at first, he seemed like a normal guy. They got married when I was around 12 or so, and we moved to a different house, just the three of us. And that was weird because my grandparents had always been there and suddenly they weren't anymore. Michael was never directly mean to me, honestly, but he also wasn't warm or tried to be a real father figure. He basically ignored me most of the time and I did the same. My mom seemed happy with him, I guess, or at least happier than I had seen her before, so I tried not to cause problems and just do my thing. Go to school, see my grandparents when I could. Normal teenager stuff. Things got weird when my mom got pregnant. I was 16. I was in my junior year of high school, and one day she came home and sat Michael and me down in the living room and told us she was expecting twins. I remember Michael got super excited, like I had never seen him that happy, and I said something like, "Congratulations," or "That's great," because honestly I didn't know what else to say. It's not that I was upset or anything. It was just weird to think I was going to have siblings when I was already almost an adult. But whatever. Families are weird sometimes. What happened next is still hard for me to process even now, years later. Like 2 weeks after she told us about the pregnancy, my mom called me to talk alone. She told me to sit down, that she needed to tell me something important, and I thought it was going to be something about the babies, or I don't know. But what came out of her mouth was basically that they couldn't support me anymore. Just like that. She told me that with 2 babies on the way, money was going to be really tight, that the house wasn't big enough, that Michael and her had talked and decided that the best thing was for me to go live with my grandparents again. But she said it like it was something temporary, you know? Like it was just until things stabilized or something. I sat there, unable to believe what I was hearing. I told her, "Mom, I'm 16 years old. I'm in school. Where am I supposed to go?" And she just kept repeating that my grandparents could take care of me, that they had always been there for us. I asked her if this was permanent or what, and she got super defensive and said she didn't know, that it depended on how things went, but that for now, I needed to pack my things, because the twins were going to be born in a few months, and they needed to prepare everything. Michael showed up at that moment and basically backed up everything she said, saying something about it being what's best for the family and that I would understand when I was older. I didn't have much choice. Honestly. I called my grandparents crying that same night and told them everything, and they, without hesitating for a single second, told me to come over, that I would always have a place with them. My grandfather was furious with my mom. I could hear him in the background telling my grandmother, how could she do that? But my grandmother just told me, "Honey, pack what you need and come tomorrow." The next day I took out all my clothes, my school stuff, some personal things, and I left. My mom was at work. Michael helped me load the boxes into my grandfather's car but didn't say much, and that was it. 16 years, living with my mom, and I left. Just like that. As if it were nothing. Living with my grandparents again was weird at first because I wasn't a kid anymore. I was a teenager with my own stuff and problems, but they never made me feel like a burden. They gave me my own room. My grandmother made sure I had everything I needed for school, and my grandfather even got me a part-time job at a warehouse where he had a friend. My mom would call me from time to time at first, asking how I was, but the conversations were super awkward and forced, and after the twins were born, she basically stopped calling altogether. I went to meet them once at the hospital because my grandparents insisted it was the right thing to do, but it was super weird being there watching my mom with these two babies acting like she was mother of the year when she had literally kicked me out of the house a few months before. I finished high school living with my grandparents, and then came the part of thinking about college. I knew I wanted to go, that I needed to go if I wanted to have any decent future, but I didn't have money, obviously, and my grandparents weren't exactly swimming in cash either. I applied to every scholarship I could, filled out like 1,000 forms, and in the end, I got some partial scholarships that covered like half the tuition. For the rest, I had to take out student loans, and my aunt, my mom's sister, was an angel and agreed to be a co-signer, because without that, they wouldn't have approved them. My mom never offered to help with anything, not a peso, and when my grandmother mentioned college to her, she said something like, I was old enough to figure it out myself. College was tough, I'm not going to lie. I worked 2 jobs while studying full-time, I slept like 4 or 5 hours a night, and I basically lived on ramen and coffee. But I graduated, with a degree in business administration and a ton of debt, but I graduated. I got an entry-level job at a real estate company. I was making pennies at first, like barely enough for the cheapest apartment I could find and food, and every month I had to choose what to pay first. My grandparents helped me when they could. They would bring me food or give me some money here and there, but they were also retired and couldn't do much. During all these years, like from when I left at 16 until I was like 26 or 27, I practically didn't talk to my mom. She never called, never asked how I was, nothing. I knew through my grandparents that the twins were growing up and that she was still with Michael, but that was it. Things started to change for me like 3 or 4 years ago. I got promoted at work. I started earning better. I was able to move to a decent apartment, and for the first time in my life, I had some money in the bank after paying all my bills. I wasn't rich or anything, but I wasn't living day to day, basically. I paid my student loans religiously every month, bought nice things for my grandparents, and finally felt like all the effort had been worth it. Like, I had built my life from scratch without anyone's help except my grandparents and my aunt, and I was proud of that, you know? And then my mom showed up. Like 6 months ago, the doorbell to my apartment rang on a Saturday morning. I was in pajamas drinking coffee, and when I opened the door, I almost fell backwards because there she was. I hadn't seen her in person in years, like literally years, and there she was, standing at my door like nothing. She said, "Hi, honey, can I come in?" And I was so in shock that I just stepped aside and let her in. She sat on my couch, looked around the apartment with this face like, "Oh, look how well you're doing," and then got straight to the point. She told me the twins were 17 now, that they were applying to colleges, and that she and Michael couldn't afford tuition. She told me she had heard I was doing well at work, that I had finally settled down, and that she needed me to help with money for the twins' college. I sat there, unable to believe what I was hearing. I told her, "Mom, you kicked me out of the house when I was 16 because you said you couldn't support me. You haven't called once in years to see if I was alive or dead, and now you come here asking me for money." She got super defensive and said that was a long time ago, that it had been a difficult but necessary decision, and that now it was different because the twins were my family, my siblings, and that I had a responsibility to help them. I told her no, absolutely not, that I had paid for my own college, working myself to exhaustion and taking out loans I was still paying, and that she had made it very clear that I wasn't her priority, so the twins weren't mine either. She got really angry. She started yelling that I was selfish, that I was a bad brother, that after everything she had done for me, this is how I repaid her. I told her, "Mom, what exactly did you do for me? My grandparents raised me. I paid for my own education. I built my life alone. What am I supposed to thank you for?" I told her to leave my apartment and not come back. She kept yelling while I pushed her toward the door, saying I was going to regret it, that she couldn't believe her own son was so cruel, and finally she left, slamming the door. I thought that would be it, but oh no, it was just beginning. She started sending me emails, like 2 or 3 a day, with these super long messages about how I had a family obligation to help, that my siblings weren't to blame for anything, that if I really cared about family, I would do this for them. She called my phone constantly, left voicemails where she alternated between begging and threatening. I blocked her number, but she got other numbers and kept calling. It was like constant harassment for weeks. And then she showed up at my work. I was in a meeting with a client when my assistant interrupted me, saying there was a woman in reception causing a scene and asking to see me. I went out and there was my mom, yelling in the middle of the office that I was her son and that she needed to talk to me immediately. Everyone was staring at us. It was humiliating. Building security had to intervene, and she kept yelling while they were taking her out, saying it was a family emergency and that I was a horrible son. They had to call the police to get her off the property. My boss was super understanding, but it was still horrible having to explain this whole situation to him. The emails became more aggressive after that. She told me she was going to ruin my reputation, that she was going to tell everyone what kind of person I was, that she was going to make me pay for abandoning my family. They were almost threatening, honestly. She showed up at my apartment several times, knocking on the door and ringing the bell for hours, yelling from outside. My neighbors started complaining. Once I found her waiting for me in the parking lot when I got home from work, she blocked my way with her car and started yelling at me from the window. I had to turn around and wait for her to leave. Everything reached its peak like 3 weeks ago. I've gone out to buy some things, and when I got back to my apartment, she was there again, but this time she managed to follow me to the door before I could close it. She pushed the door open, entered my apartment without permission, and started yelling that she wasn't going to leave me alone until I gave her the money. I told her to leave or I was going to call the police, and she literally went at me. She pushed me against the wall. She was hitting my chest with her fists, yelling that I was selfish and that I deserved to suffer. My neighbor heard the commotion and called the police. When the police arrived, she was still there yelling. I told them the whole story, about the harassment, the threats, the incident at my work, everything. They saw the bruises that were already forming on my arms where she had grabbed me, and they arrested her for assault. It was surreal seeing my own mother being arrested, but I also felt a gigantic relief. This madness was finally ending. The next day, I went to court and requested a restraining order. I submitted all the emails, the recordings of the voicemails, the evidence from the incident at my work, photos of the bruises, everything. The judge granted it to me without a problem. Now she can't come near me, my house, or my work for at least a year. If she does, she's going to end up in jail. The last news I had was that Michael and her are fighting over money, that apparently their marriage is super bad, and that the twins ended up going to a state public university with student loans like the rest of normal people. My aunt told me my mom is going around telling the whole family that I'm a monster, that I betrayed her, but most of the family knows the real story of how she kicked me out when I was a teenager, so they don't really believe her. I'm in the process of moving to a new apartment in a different part of the city, one where she can't find me. I'm not going to give the address to anyone except my grandparents and my aunt, and I've told them that under no circumstances should they give it to her. I'm also considering changing my phone number, although it's a pain because it means updating everything. My grandparents are disappointed in my mom but not surprised. They always knew what kind of person she really was. My grandfather told me a few days ago that he was proud of me for standing up for my boundaries, that not everyone has the courage to do it, especially when it comes to family. My grandmother just hugged me and told me she loved me, that she had always loved me, and that she was sorry my mom couldn't be the mother I deserved. What hurts me most isn't even what happened when I was 16, although that was obviously horrible. What really breaks me is realizing that my mom only looked for me because she thought she could get money out of me. Not because she missed me. Not because she wanted a relationship with me. Not because she felt bad about what she had done. Just because she needed money, and I thought I was an easy source because technically I'm her son. She didn't even try to pretend she cared about how I was or what had become of my life all these years. It went straight to give me money. And when I said no, she became violent and harassing. Sometimes I wonder if I did the right thing. If I should have at least considered helping the twins, who technically aren't to blame for any of this. But then I remember I have almost $30,000 still in student loans that I'm going to be paying for years. that nobody helped me when I needed it, and that if I start giving in now, my mom is never going to leave me alone. The twins are going to be fine. They have loans available like I did. They have two parents who can work and help them, and they're going to learn what it is to work hard for what you want. I don't owe them anything, and I don't owe my mom anything either. The restraining order gives me peace of mind, but it's also sad, you know, because it means I'm officially telling my mom I don't want her to be part of my life in any way. And even though I know it's the right thing, even though I know she did this to me first when she kicked me out as a teenager, it still hurts. I guess it's always going to hurt a little, having to accept that your own mother sees you as an ATM and nothing more. The only thing I know for certain is that I'm not going to let her manipulate me anymore. I built my life in spite of her, not thanks to her, and I'm going to keep living on my terms. If that makes me selfish according to her, then I guess I'm selfish. But at least I can sleep at night knowing I didn't let her crush me again.